So you're running out of closet space. The good news? You don't need to stop shopping. You just need to start selling with The RealReal. The RealReal is the world's largest and most trusted resource for authenticated luxury resale. Whether it's that mini bag that can't even fit your phone, or those boots you never fully broke in, The RealReal handles everything from photography and copywriting to shipping and pricing. So you can just sit back, get paid, and make room for things that actually feel like you. And with 10,000 plus new arrivals every single day from top designers like Prada, Celine, Louis Vuitton, and Loewe, all for up to 90% off retail, you're bound to find something perfectly on brand to fill that extra closet space with. Plus, right now, you can get an extra $100 to shop when you sell for the first time. Make room for what feels like you. Go to therealreal.com to start selling and get your extra $100 to keep shopping at therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com. Terms apply.
You're listening to Killer Communications, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Campus Killings,
and Below the Surface. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
In 2006, the FBI received an envelope postmarked from Las Vegas. Inside was an anonymous letter in which the writer confessed to being the contract killer in the unsolved murder of Seattle, Washington prosecutor Thomas C. Wales. But whether the letter writer really was the perpetrator is still undetermined 20 years later. Many theories have circulated about who could have written it, and whether or not the letter is actually related to the case at all. So we'll lay out the theories and let you decide. Chapter 1. A Targeted Kill. On the night of October 11, 2001, a resident of the Queen Anne neighborhood in Seattle's suburbs heard an unusual noise. Gunshots were ringing through the night. They looked out their window to see a tall, clearly male suspect running down the dimly lit street. A call was placed to 911 about gunfire in the usually quiet, upscale neighborhood, and when law enforcement arrived, they found 49-year-old federal prosecutor Thomas Wales shot in the neck and chest. He was still alive despite the wounds, and rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately, he died only a few hours later. The scene revealed that whoever the shooter was had evaded Wales' security lights and shot him through the basement window where he'd been answering emails in his home office. Shell casings peppered the lawn in front of the window, but aside from one eyewitness who'd seen a man running into the night, and another who later was able to give a description of a strange man walking the neighborhood a few days before, the killer left no trace. With no signs of forced entry, and nothing else missing from the Wales home, investigators realized they were looking at a targeted hit. But who would have wanted to kill Thomas Wales? Though the FBI became involved in the case almost immediately, and an extensive investigation was conducted, years quickly passed with the gunman still at large. Chapter 2. A Man with Enemies. At first glance, Thomas Wales was an unlikely victim for a hired hit. He was a father of two who graduated from Harvard in 1974, obtained his law degree from Hofstra, and signed on to be a federal prosecutor in 1983. He was an avid mountain climber who enjoyed baking artisan breads and his signature holiday fruitcake. He was devoted to his wife, even after she realized she was a lesbian and decided to end their 20-year marriage in 2000. And he was very active in his local community. He took his kids hiking, read them books, watched their soccer practices, and was even refurbishing the floors in their 1915 Craftsman home. But a deeper look at Thomas's professional life showed a man who may have had a target on his back. As an AUSA, Thomas prosecuted white-collar crimes for the federal district courts in Washington for over 18 years. While his focus was mostly on savings and loan fraud, he had never lost a case in his long career, and he also headed a national commission on sentencing guidelines. A lot of people may have had a reason to hate him after losing to him in court. Thomas was also an incredibly vocal spokesman for the gun control organization, Washington Ceasefire. In 1997, 5 years prior to his murder, Thomas spearheaded one of Ceasefire's largest campaigns, in which he raised over $1 million in support of a ballot initiative that would require trigger locks on weapons, training for gun owners, and background checks for gun buyers. He gained enough support to make the NRA nervous, and though the initiative ultimately failed, Thomas gained success for several of Ceasefire's initiatives in 2000, following the 1999 Columbine High School massacre. He lobbied hard enough that the NRA agreed to sit at the table to discuss law changes surrounding sales and gun shows. These negotiations went on between the NRA, Ceasefire, and other legislators for several months before agreements broke down in April 2001. Thomas put pressure on the NRA that he would create an incredibly strict ballot initiative for the upcoming November vote if they didn't agree to the terms on the table. But on October 11, 2001, only a month before the elections, Thomas would die in what looked like a targeted hit. In addition, in 2000, just a year before his murder, Thomas prosecuted an 8-count indictment against 2 pilots from Intrex Helicopter Company. The charges, which included conspiracy to defraud the United States, mail fraud, and falsifying statements, claimed that the pilots, James Anderson and Kim Powell, had falsified a helicopter's maintenance records to the FAA in an effort to certify a refurbished military helicopter for civilian use. However, a year into the case, the FAA's expert witness cited that he no longer agreed with the prosecution's theories, and without their expert witness, Thomas was told to dismiss the case. But this didn't stop one of the pilots, James Anderson, from filing a suit against Thomas under an obscure legal option called the Hyde Amendment, which allows acquitted defendants to sue prosecutors to recoup legal expenses if they can prove their case was frivolous or in bad faith. According to reports, Anderson claimed that the fraud case had destroyed his reputation in the industry and lost him clients and millions of dollars. He sued Thomas personally for misconduct and demanded $128,000 to recoup legal fees. While the judgments pertaining to the suit are still sealed and unavailable to the public, a federal judge dismissed Anderson's claims, and this motion was upheld under appeal. But according to reports, this didn't make Anderson go away. The government received information from at least 2 people citing that Anderson held a grudge and had a violent and retributive nature. And this behavior could be seen in September 2001, when Thomas spoke out against the burgeoning public suggestion of allowing pilots to carry guns post 9/11. Anderson reportedly took this personally, feeling that Thomas was specifically talking about him in his speech. So when Thomas turned up murdered, law enforcement had a long list of potential suspects, but what part of Thomas's life they may have come from would take time to investigate. Chapter 3. Person of Interest. While the FBI became involved in the case almost immediately due to Thomas's profession, most of their lead investigators were occupied with the 9/11 terror attacks, which diverted much of the FBI's resources away from Thomas's case. Local investigators did what they could in the months following the murder. They didn't have much besides the shell casings and a police sketch from an eyewitness account from one of Thomas's neighbors who had seen a suspicious-looking man carrying a black nylon suitcase a few days before Thomas was killed. Police began the enormous search through the long list of possible enemies Thomas may have created through his job in civic lobbying. Perhaps it was a gun enthusiast who had taken it upon themselves to get rid of Washington's most prominent gun control advocates. But this trail died quickly, as the NRA and other gun enthusiasts had much more to lose from being involved in a high-profile murder case than just sitting down and working with Thomas on legislation. Another theory purported that a perpetrator in one of Thomas's numerous closed cases may have held a grudge against him and sought to murder him. But this turned up empty too. The only person he'd prosecuted who had anything negative to say was the pilot James Anderson. Investigators looked into Thomas's personal life as well. Since he was divorced, did his ex-wife have any reason to want him dead? It didn't seem likely. But what was uncovered were 2 people who'd had an excellent friendship whose only reason for divorce was non-compatible sexuality. In fact, Thomas's ex-wife continued to run her business from their basement home office after the divorce. His death destroyed his ex-wife, and she was quickly ruled out as a suspect. The few girlfriends Thomas had in the year after his divorce were also called in for questioning, but none of them had a motive to kill him. The only person who seemed to have clear motive was James Anderson. The FBI was incredibly suspicious of him, due in large part to his lawsuit against Thomas, but also for his close proximity to the Wells residence. Anderson lived in Bellevue, Washington, only a 35-minute drive from Queen Anne. But a breakdown of his whereabouts on the night of Thomas's murder made it difficult to unequivocally name him as the killer. At around 7 p.m., Anderson and a friend had attended a movie about 10 minutes away from Thomas's home. Phone records showed that Anderson then answered a landline call from his Beaux Arts residence only a short time after the shooting. While it's possible that he could have killed Thomas and driven back to the home in time between the movie ending and the answering of the phone call, investigators feel the timeline is too tight to be viable. But James Anderson remained their only person of interest as the one-year anniversary of Thomas's murder approached. Despite the fact that the pilot didn't resemble the FBI sketch, James Anderson remained on their radar. They conducted a search of his home and 2 other residences in 2004 and took away 27 boxes containing potential evidence. They also took bullets uncovered from the wall of his home and those of a friend's house to compare them against the bullets found at the crime scene. 2 of Anderson's acquaintances also gave statements that he was known to fire his handgun into the ground from his back deck. But when tested, the bullets and handgun found in Anderson's possession did not match those found at the scene of Thomas's murder. While Anderson remained a person of interest, and 10 FBI agents worked the case full-time for years, no charges were ever filed against the pilot. Thomas's case disappeared from all but the most local of headlines, and his family feared his case would go cold. And then the FBI received a strange letter that would turn this case in a new direction. Chapter 4. Gidget. In 2006, a handwritten envelope arrived at Seattle's FBI headquarters with a return address from someone calling themselves Gidget at 2400 West Charlton, Las Vegas. Postmarked January 23rd, inside the envelope was a typed letter that stated the following: R.E. Thomas C. Wales. Okay, so I was broke and between jobs, and I got an anonymous call offering this part's an redacted amount of money to shoot the guy. So I drove to Seattle to do the job. I did not even know his name. Just got laid off from a job. Nice talking lady. I didn't know her name. She called me, talked to me by name, and asked if I needed some money. I agreed to pursue the matter. Hell, I was going bankrupt. Go to Seattle. Heck, I lived there once. No big deal. Hang out in this guy's backyard. She even gave me the address. Stop off at a place, pick up our gun, and drop it off at a specified location when you're done. Then you will be directed to where your money is. The wife was out of town. I had no witnesses here. I was curious about who knew me so well. I used cash to pay for all my expenses to avoid an audit trail. No cell phone. I was directed to a place to pick up the gun they wanted me to use, and an address. The gun was there. I drove to the address and then parked some distance away north of downtown. I kind of camped out in the backyard of his house and waited for the guy to settle in at his computer. Once he was there, I took careful aim. I shot 2 or possibly more times and watched him collapse. I absurdly waited a few minutes and then left. I was sure he was dead. Retracing my steps, I dropped off the gun, found my money, and returned to Vegas. I feel bad about it, but I needed the money, and there were no witnesses. I really don't know who fronted the money, but the money was there, and I sure needed it. Both the letter and envelope were swabbed for DNA, but none came back. Investigators also traced the address, but found it was tied to a business that had no seeming relation to Thomas Wales or the crime. But investigators still believe this letter was a potential lead. Though specialists sensed the story itself was fabricated, they believe the letter writer held a fairly sophisticated knowledge of the murder, and that the story contained far more detail than an average follower of this story would have gotten from media coverage. Investigators surmise that the name Gidget may have been of some significance to the writer, and may have been a word the writer used in other contexts. Possible references could have been a 1960s movie and TV show by the same name. The FBI posted the letter and photo of the envelope on their website in April 2006. With the offer of a $1 million reward, they urged the public to call with any tips. And while it was never publicized what sort of tips the FBI received from this, investigators did know that James Anderson had been visiting Las Vegas at the time the letter was postmarked. Despite claims by Anderson's lawyer that he didn't send any letters, the FBI subpoenaed Anderson in December 2006 to provide handwriting samples for analysis against the envelope. Whether his handwriting was a match or not has never been released to the public, but no arrests or charges were made at the time, so it seems likely he wasn't a match. Unfortunately for investigators, no tips or further inquiries about the letter made headway in Thomas's murder, and by 2007 the FBI reduced the number of detectives on the case from 10 to 2. It went cold quickly, and Thomas's family and colleagues had to accept the awful fact that his murder might never be solved. So they busied themselves with remembering him and honoring his memory, creating the Thomas C. Wales Foundation to support civic engagement, and in 2011, in partnership with the city of Seattle, the family broke ground on the creation of the Thomas C. Wales Recreation Park. They also put out a video the same year reminding the public about Thomas's murder and urging anyone who had information to contact the FBI. But the case would go quiet for a long time. Chapter 5. A New Suspect. For 8 years, the media was silent on Thomas's murder, and there had been nothing publicized by investigators. But that changed in 2019 when the Seattle Times published a story about a potential break in the case. Investigators had interviewed a woman named Shauna Reed in 2017 about conversations she'd had with an old boyfriend she'd been in a relationship with around the time that Thomas was murdered. According to court documents, she admitted to detectives in her 2017 interview that her ex-boyfriend, only known publicly as Suspect Number 1, bragged to her that he had been involved in the killing of the attorney. Around the time of this interview, the FBI were following leads that suggested Thomas had been killed by a hired hitman. Their investigation had led them to Shauna and Suspect Number 1, who allegedly ran with a small group of friends that included a young man whom investigators believed had been hired to kill Thomas Wales. But when Shauna was sent to testify in front of a grand jury in February 2018, she claimed she denied ever saying she'd heard anything about Thomas's murder. Meanwhile, the FBI conducted several interviews with Suspect Number 1 between 2017 and 2019, along with issuing search warrants for his phone and any information on it that might pertain to the Wales case. Through Suspect Number 1, investigators gained the name of a man from Snohomish County who they believe was responsible for killing Thomas Wales. And a tip to the FBI alerted them that the man's mugshot from a recent arrest was a potential match for the police sketch made of the eyewitness statement from 2001. As of the recording of this podcast, no one has ever been charged or arrested in Thomas's murder, but a case is currently being built around Shauna Reed, her ex-boyfriend, and the unnamed Snohomish man and their potential connection to Thomas's case. But this still leaves an opening for speculation and questions about how related or unrelated the Las Vegas letter may still be. Chapter 6. Speculations. The FBI have still not given up on James Anderson as a suspect, and one of their working theories is that he may have arranged Thomas's death through a hired hitman. While several sources agreed on this, Anderson hasn't been charged with anything, meaning there may not be yet evidence to support it, or that it's untrue. But if this theory is true, it begs the question of who may have written the Las Vegas letter. Was it Anderson himself in an effort to throw off the FBI? As I mentioned earlier, Anderson was reportedly in Las Vegas at the time the letter was postmarked. Or it could have simply been a coincidence that he was there at the same time. Some specialists believe the handwriting on the envelope looked to be written by someone's non-dominant hand. So even if Anderson passed a handwriting check with the FBI, it's possible he disguised his penmanship, or may have had someone else write out the envelope. Until more concrete evidence comes out, we can't know for sure. Perhaps this letter was written by the unnamed suspect. If he is the hitman, as the FBI's evidence seems to point to, is there a chance that he was trying to explain his reasoning for taking the job? Or was he just taunting the FBI? The lack of DNA and the typed letter do show some forethought that the letter writer went to some lengths to make sure they could not be tracked. Lastly, Is it possible this letter is simply a hoax sent by someone who wanted attention? We've seen this in several of the cases we've covered, and that letters or phone calls arriving at the FBI are simply made by enthusiasts who've been following the case and want to feel involved. The letter also arrived 5 years after Thomas's murder, and while it did contain incredibly detailed information about the case, there was nothing truly notable about the story that couldn't have been gleaned from the media coverage. And no connections between the return address or the name Gidget have ever been publicly announced in almost 20 years. Personally, I don't know what to think about this letter. It seems to me that if you're a hitman or anyone else that committed a murder and got away with it, the last thing you'd want to do is reach out to the authorities. But we've seen that time and again where killers do that. So hopefully if the killer in this case did that, it one day leads to their downfall. I'm curious to know what you all think. No matter if the letter is relevant or not, Thomas's case is still open and active. As of 2021, the DOJ announced that they've stepped up their efforts to solve Thomas's murder. They've more than doubled the reward money from $1 million to $2.5 million, and the U.S. Attorney's Office has joined the FBI task force assigned to the Thomas Wells case. If our listeners know anything about Thomas Wells' murder, we urge you to contact the FBI tip line at 206-622-0460 or email them at walestips@fbi.gov. We hope that by sharing Thomas's case, we can finally help it be solved and bring his killer to justice. Is there a case with an unexplained communication that you'd like us to cover? Please take the time to rate and review the show, and in your comments, let us know what case you'd like us to explore. You can also make your voice heard on social media. We're on every major platform. Just search for Killer Communications on your favorites. You can also contact us through our website, killercommunicationspodcast.com. And if you want to support this show and get access to early, ad-free, and bonus content of not only this show, but to every show on the AbJack network of shows, consider signing up for an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock all these benefits, and you can start with a free trial. Simply head over to Apple Podcast and search for AbJack Entertainment to get started. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks with an all-new episode of Killer Communications.
Killer Communications is narrated and produced by Mike Morford for AbJack Entertainment. It's researched and written by Abigail Belcastro. Be sure to visit the show's website, killercommunicationspodcast.com, for past episodes, social media links, show news, and more.